This was something else that was posted in React content suggestions that I thought was pretty interesting. And true, at least at first glance at the title. It's simply impossible to make a difficulty level that's just right for all players. Correct. Which is why it's good to have multiple difficulty levels. Because you can't make just one that's gonna make everybody happy. Because there's some people that are really good at the game and there's some people that are very bad. But everybody wants to have fun in the game. So what does this tell us? You know, it's like at Taco Bell. Some people really like spicy food and they have access to Diablo sauce and fire. Some people only want hot. And some people will only use the mild sauce packet. But all that shit is available to you to choose the difficulty that you want. Cause ow. I know. Now if the battle designer, if they've gone to the battle designer and be like, hey, we need you to make something that everybody's gonna like. Let's see, I'm gonna actually read the article. How Final Fantasy XIV's lead battle designer has been playing a precarious balancing game for Dawntrail's dungeons and raids. This is a pretty, what's the word? Unenviable job. I would not want to be the person in charge of design, like balancing the dungeons. Because some people are already mad that bosses require you to move a little more in them. Pleasing everyone ain't easy. It's impossible. It's impossible. What you can do is piss off less people, though. While Final Fantasy XIV is often praised for its story, it's the endgame where players spend most of their time. When was this written? No, that's a picture from... Okay. With dungeons, trials, savage raids, and more casual endeavors, FF14 is something for everyone. The latest expansion has the best endgame yet, and I want to know how the team fine-tunes the challenge across the MMO's variety of difficulties. I sat down with Mr. Ozma. Oh, he's the one who made Top, right? Yeah. Wasn't he the one in charge of Top? To chat about trying to please everyone in a genre. I believe it's simply impossible to design a difficulty level that's just right for all players. That's true. Each piece of content should be designed with a specific demographic in mind, with a difficulty that's just right for that target audience. At the same time, I also believe the content should still have something in store for players outside the primary target audience. But the dungeons kind of include everyone, because if you want this, you have to do it. Even if you're a high-end player. You can't just skip doing that. I guess you could do hunt trains. But then is that really meeting your difficulty level too? For example, alliance raids are primarily designed for those who don't participate in high-end duties, such as extreme trials or savage raids. On the other hand, those who enjoy savage raids and other high-end duties may find the alliance raids are neither satisfying nor engaging. To them, alliance raids would be boring content. I mean, so although we adjust difficulty levels based on a primary target audience, we still try to make the content as enjoyable as possible for all players. Again, we come back to this idea that I have. That I don't think something has to be super hard to be fun. I really feel this in my heart that this is true. Because Aglaia, as an example for an alliance raid, was it hard? No. But there was a lot about it that was fun. Why? Because it did a lot of things differently. It played around with the map space. You had like different kind of crazy mechanics going on that we weren't used to. Like scales was fun to do, and I'm still excited to do it, even though it's not hard. It's not a challenge to figure out what to do. It's just neat. I just think it's neat in a lot of cases because it's innovative or fresh, right? I don't think that we have to be... Another example, I pull this one up all the time. The Warrior of Light trial. Easy trial. But most fun I ever had in a trial. So fun. Fun to do. Titania was not very hard. I thought it was fun. So these things don't have to be together, right? Fun is not the same as hard. Which is actually something that I would... Coming from the guy who designed Top, I think it's a perfect example of this principle that I'm trying to illustrate. Top is extremely hard, and it is not fun. It is not fun to do it. It's annoying. DSR is extremely hard, but it's fun. It feels fair. So, just... It makes sense that he's kind of hung up on this idea. It's gotta be harder to be more fun. Okay. This approach makes sense, especially when put into practice. For example, patch 7.0 added Warcore Lardor Extreme, which was designed with a target audience of players who are trying extreme trials for the first time. Oh, was that Valley Garmanda? Yeah. That was pretty much universally loved, even though it's not the hardest. I don't think people have said it was the hardest. I mean, I did it much later, so I can't really judge how it was on release, because I dragged my ass getting around to it. But I think it's been pretty loved. As a result, many players probably felt the encounter was easier than the extreme trials in the patch 6.x series, but even so, I believe many veteran players still found the battle against Valley Garmanda to be refreshing and enjoyable, thanks to flashy attacks and mechanics. There you go. That's exactly what I'm trying to say. That's exactly what I'm trying to say. It was super fun. So, but... And maybe he is starting to realize this then. Realizing like, well, was it because of the flashy attacks and mechanics like Mountain Fire? It seems like he's actually pondering this whole thing, which is a good. That's good data for him. By approaching each content type for slightly differing players, rather than trying to please everybody at once, battles are able to retain their sense of uniqueness. Something that's particularly apparent since the Dawntrail expansion compared to previous ones. The level 100, well, it's kind of always been this way. 110, I guess the question that you really need to ask yourself, right, as a battle designer is, what's the minimum requirement for difficulty that you think should be in the game? Like, what should be the base level? Base level of competency you would expect from even the lowest tier content. How much engagement with that do you think that people need? How easy can you make it without it causing new problems for you down the line with players who got used to not like understanding stuff that they need to understand? The level 100 dungeon, Tender Valley, is a great example. Each boss has a wildly different battle flow, like watching out for the second one's bombs before being sent through tubes that blast across the field, or the bouncy council of cheeky serpents making you dash for safe spots. The mechanics feel unique to the setting, rather than just scaling for difficulty. Man, why can't we have all the dungeons from the same expansion in the roulette. Why is it always gotta be just a couple? The latest dungeon is a good baseline. Oh, Uewata Field Station. The boss is good. I'm still not happy with how trash is handled though. That's the hill I'm gonna die on apparently. Nakagawa talks me through what changed. The difficulty of the battle content in 7.0 onward was discussed with core members of the battle team, including producer and director Naoki Yoshida, and certain aspects of our direction was changed compared to pre-7.0. Prior to 7.0, our policy of reducing gameplay-related frustrations was sometimes taken too far, and in some cases, even the hurdles and frustrations that existed to make the gameplay more engaging were eliminated, which made them less fun. Thank you for acknowledging this. With that in mind, we shifted to a design policy of placing greater emphasis on enjoyability. This major shift took place in 7.0 and 7.1. It was a bold decision for us with a lot of unknown factors, but we're relieved to hear that people enjoyed it. Well, that's a steps in a positive direction. But you still need to take the next step, which is being a little less formulaic with your dungeon and other content. Spice it up. Okay, you spicing it up with the boss mechanics, but we gotta make each dungeon feel unique, really. And also, battle design, combat class design comes into play here. God, I can't talk. But we're apparently not gonna see that till 8.0. I want to be able to do unique stuff depending on my job, even in the lowest tier difficulty content. That makes me feel special because I'm playing that job. It's simple. I don't know what you need to do, but maybe give me my PvP private LB to use in a dungeon. Just something other than holy spam, ideally, as a white bitch. The approach in earlier expansions, such as Endwalker, helped make the combat streamlined, but there were casualties in some fights along the way. Fights were still fun, but lacked spark, making repeated visits a chore. Seeing Smileton pop up in a roulette elicited a heavy sigh, rather than joy, despite its wild surroundings. We just stopped bringing in healer at that point, I remember. And then it goes much faster. We just stopped bringing heals. There are a fewer specific fights I remember in Endwalker, even though I loved it. Isn't that kind of crazy though? Like, we shouldn't have been able to just stop bringing a healer. That shouldn't be possible. We should need a healer. I feel like that's a symptom of an issue. There are fewer specific fights I remember in Endwalker, even though I loved it, as a lot of them featured similar mechanics. During the patch 6.x patches, we vetoed some interesting ideas for mechanics so melee players wouldn't be frustrated by periods of downtime where they can't attack the boss. We removed them regardless of how interesting the mechanics could be. In hindsight, we should have properly weighed the interesting nature of an idea versus the frustration of being unable to attack. But our policies had formed an environment where such ideas were easily eliminated. I mean, can we do interesting things while keeping up time? I don't know. If you don't want there to be downtime, like, I don't know, maybe the boss can send out ads that share a health pool with a boss that are chasing you while you're running to Timbuktu or wherever the hell you want people to go during the phase change. Like, do you want people like swatting mosquitoes while they're getting on the roller coaster to head to Disneyland? Like, I don't know what maybe you don't have to be attacking the boss at all times. Maybe the boss swings his big fat tail around and you can smack on that while you're running. I don't know. I'm not a battle designer. Thankfully things are much different in Dawntrail. Bosses have their positionals once more. And recent duties like Ultimate Raid Futures Rewritten are stuffed with pockets of downtime that have jobs planning their rotations more strategically. Well, I wouldn't know. I've kind of checked out of raiding this expansion. I don't really feel like it. Even though I've heard it's quite good, I need a break from raiding. From 7.0 onward, our policy is to properly assess and adopt interesting ideas as much as possible. There's a fine line between gameplay-related tension and fun. What is fun to you, Mr. Ozma? When are you having the most fun? Is it during Pantocrator? When other people running ahead and other people falling behind? Is it during Towers and Tethers? Is that fun? I am like traumatized. So remembering the specific order of Towers and Tethers. In moderation, tension makes for a greater sense of achievement when the hurdle is overcome and the content is cleared. Right. Reducing tension difficulties in turn can undermine a player's improvement and sense of achievement, which taken to the extreme. With that in mind, reassessing the battle's sense of achievement and stress required to achieve became our aim. For example, the Alexander raids in 3.x featured a variety of unique mechanics, including riding and operating a mount, being quarantined in a room via a crane game mechanic, or transforming into a gorilla to punch giant bombs away. I remember this. There was some wild shit that happened in Alexander. You had one of the boss fights where it's just a gauntlet of 4 bosses, and you can't stop. Once you start the first boss, you gotta keep going to the second, third, and fourth. And you can't quit that whole time. And at the time, this was much harder to deal with because everybody had to manage their mana and resources for that whole gauntlet. And if you failed on like the 3rd boss, you start all over. You start at the first boss again. It was really rough, but it was definitely different. And there's the boss where you had to like change into a bird or a gorilla or something to do different things. That was really crazy. If we continue to veto ideas like these out of concern for frustrations, like losing DPS when turning into a gorilla, our content would lose its diversity. Just have the gorilla do a shitload of damage. Problem solved. And all bosses would end up... like, make it not feel bad to turn into a gorilla, maybe. Following the same patterns. That said, we also don't believe that everything needs to be unique. After all, some battles should remain orthodox, while others can be innovative. And it was this ideology which led to the revision of our content design policies. Well, it seems they're on the right track. They generally have been getting some good press and good responses from the players in Dawntrail. So it seems like they are, at least the battle design team they're listening and paying attention. Oh, about Chaotic Alliance raid. What do you think about that? Buns, have you cleared it? What are your thoughts on it in general as a new piece of content? If you cleared it or if you've been working on it? I want to know how the team went about redesigning the Cloud of Darkness. We received a lot of player feedback regarding a lack of mid-core content, as well as a strong desire for more large-scale content. This is correct. This is what I had asked for. I had been very vocal about wanting the more big group content that makes you feel like you're playing an MMO. And so in that sense, and also Chaotic Alliance raid also has quite good rewards. So in a lot of ways, Chaotic Alliance Raid reflects them listening to feedback that they got in Endwalker. However, for me, is it just that I've become casual instead of midcore? Maybe that's my problem. The Chaotic Alliance Raid is our direct response to these requests. With that in mind, we decided our target audience would primarily be those who fall somewhere between Extreme Trials and the first 2 Savage encounters, and we began brainstorming specific mechanics from there. We also created the raid with the goal of designing a unique encounter to emphasize the experience of battling in a 24-player group, rather than simply recreating an 8-player raid into one for 24 players. Chaotic Alliance raids are a brand new type of content, so we're not sure if everything will work out as planned. But we'd be glad if you could try it out and let us know what you think. So, chat, what do you think? I love the fight with the people. Classic. I think Chaotic is a great new form of content. Fun, but 24-man body checks suck. I think NA's inability to organize makes it more hardcore than it should. I feel like they underestimated how difficult it would be to get 24 players all on the same page. Like not standing on the same platform. I think this adds a degree of difficulty that might have been unforeseen. Because, like, in an extreme trial, generally, if you make a mistake here and there, it's recoverable. And if that's the audience that you're going for, also in the Savage encounter, generally it's recoverable. If it's the first fight, or first 2 fights. In this case, it really seems like everybody has to be on the ball. Chaotic ain't for casual players. I wish it came out sooner, and I wish instead of practicing with 12 people without actually being able to clear, that it would scale so you can go in with 12 to 24. Because getting 24 people to stay in Prague in PF is the hardest part of it. Yes, that is what I think too. Like, for example, when I'm thinking about large-scale content, like what do I mean when I think about satisfying large-scale content that involves a lot of players? That's somewhat challenging, but isn't crazy. To me, I always think back to Baldessian Arsenal. It's a 56-man raid. It's 56 people that all need to be on top of their shit. And at the final part of the last boss, there's a couple of mechanics where one person doing it wrong can wipe the entire raid. But it's not a mechanic that every single person will get. Like, this is RNG. It's like getting a meteor. If you get it on you and you don't know what to do, you can wipe the raid, but you might not get it. And most of it is stuff that you can be coached through. Like if you're listening to callouts, everybody can generally organize and do that. But it's not like everybody needs to be on the ball the entire time. I'm biased. I have 50 plus clears and I love it. But what kind, like, do you think that they've hit the mark, Craig, with the type of player that they're aiming this content at? Like, how much time do you think you would need to invest realistically into it? There's a ton of prog liars at PM. Yeah, I bet. It would be cooler if PF was full data center, but ultimately, I think it's fun. You can mint through some missing towers, but people usually don't make mechanics that are supposed to go successfully. Damn. It's the organized part that's a problem. I want drop in, drop out stuff, not a job. Yeah, I agree with that. To me, BA feels more hardcore. You need to find a Discord. This can be done in PF with some degree of frustration. Yeah, I think that's fair to say that for BA, there's like several barriers to entry that I don't know if they really add a lot to the experience, having those barriers to entry present. But all that aside, just looking at BA as content on its own, like in a vacuum, I feel like it's more satisfying large-scale content because it can drop, like, there's a couple things you need to learn about, but it's not overwhelming. There's usually only a couple things per fight that you really need to worry about. I honestly think the only real problem with it are towers. If they did less damage, then the difficulty of mechanics is not hard. I love that BA basically makes you sign an E-waiver too. One fully missed towers, pretty much a wipe. I think they over-tuned it a bit for where they wanted to be with it. I think that there's some things about it that are really good, and there's some things about it that are really frustrating. But ultimately, I think having content that's easy to drop, like, you know, drop in and drop out to, and not feel like you need to put in a ton of commitment towards, it might be a better direction to take with it. It feels like large-scale content might need to be easier because it's harder to coordinate a bunch of people. I don't think they thought about scalable content like WoW started doing years ago. Yeah, I think that having it be scalable to how many people are actually present would help a lot. Because, yeah, it's like herding cats. Trying to deal with 24 people all in the same, who are listening and on the ball. Prog is not that much worse in PF than Extreme, but Reclear is 10 times worse. Huh. That is weird. I think literally if you eliminated the punishing nature of towers, this content would be way easier to clear in PF. So basically, the towers do an assload of damage and can very easily wipe everyone. The single biggest issue with the fight itself. It's also something people that haven't done X plus before are trying. They're used to regular alliance raids and don't quite grasp that there are some literal savage mechanics in the fight. So do you think that rather than trying to build something that's between Extreme and Savage, it would have been better for a 24-person content to make it something that's like less than an Extreme level? Because I feel like the jump between Extreme and Savage is relatively smooth for a player that's getting used to raiding. For the most part, if you can get comfy in Extreme Trials, you're gonna be okay going into the first and second Savage tier. And I think that what they need to be working towards more is building a, like, the bridge from where Alliance raids are now up into the harder content. Just at X or slightly below. Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that would be a good spot for it to be in. Also, I do think that naming it an Alliance raid is a little confusing for people. Yeah, bridging the gap between story content and paying attention in the fight content. Towers give a Volden stack as well, and every tank is taking autos the whole time. Tanks not voking is really one of the biggest issues I run into. Yeah. Chaotic is M2S, M3S levels of difficulty. Yeah, I think that... I think it's a little too much. I think it's a little too high. PF experience depends on the region. EU and NA, especially on release, are quick to rage quit in even one pull. Most JP players were in it for the clear and would spend a good amount of time to actually prog and PF. That sounds like what I typically hear about JP data centers. I think that their experience with being able to coordinate together is much different than on EU and NA. And I don't know if the devs are aware of that. Like, maybe on JP server, it is at the right difficulty. But calling it mid-core doesn't feel accurate. Like, I don't think Yoshi P and the team know how it is to raid over here in PF. I don't. You think Chaotic is nowhere near as punishing as M2S and M3S. This is a very productive conversation to have, and I do think it's something that, like, I might want to try to crystallize into some kind of feedback, because it's clear that they've listened to feedback that we've given, but there's a couple things that could be improved with this. Like because for me, it didn't really hit the mark for me. It hasn't hit the mark for me. I haven't completely given up on it. Like, I might still do it. But for me, as a more casual player now, I want something that I can much more easily jump in and jump out of. Like, I don't want to have as big of a commitment as what they're asking of me. And maybe that commitment wouldn't be as large in a JP data center, but it's a pretty big one over here. You want to prog Chaotic? We're doing a run this weekend. I do not have time. I do not have time to do this. I don't want to raid. I'm just not interested in raiding. So, I don't know. It's possible that I'm just not even the target demographic for this content at all. I don't really want to raid. And I'm not going to force myself to raid either. I guess that's why I would rather it be something a little bit easier and more casual, because I cannot make the commitment right now. I don't want to. If this is their idea of mid-court, I don't know what to say. Many people in the fight are 720, even 730 bis, and people still have hard DPS checks from all the deaths, especially in phase 1. What the Animal Crossing content were promised. Yeah, I don't know. It's just... I guess my biggest issue as a more casual player now with the Chaotic Alliance raid, from the new perspective that I have now, is just that I didn't feel like it added something that was fundamentally different from what the game already offers. Like, if I wanted to raid, I have access to Extreme Trials, Savage, and Ultimate. I could do all of that. And that doesn't feel that, like, this is another room with a hard boss. It doesn't feel like something crazy different than that. But I don't know. I don't know. If I'm not liking something, I usually just stop doing it. I've gotten over being angry about trying to force something that isn't for me. Yeah, I'm not gonna force myself to do it if I don't think that I'm interested in doing it. So I'm not really, I haven't been putting a lot of time into it. But it's still interesting to hear where people felt like it landed on the difficulty spectrum that FF14 has. That's interesting for me to hear from those of you who have done it. Is there any plans for Criterion anymore? Or did they ditch that content entirely? I thought that they said that they were gonna add more, but I haven't heard much about it since Dawntrail came out. So there's a chance, but I don't know. You'd have to wait till the next live letter, I think. Do we know when that is? I thought that there were some plans. The relic grind zone would be organic and normal to be added from the start of the first patch of the expansion, because your weapon would also upgrade every patch. Yeah, a lot of people have been making that suggestion, and I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't add that for 8.0. They might go in that direction for 8.0 and beyond, but we're way too late in the game now to do that for Dawntrail. Just joined in. Can you scroll up a bit? We were talking about the Chaotic Alliance raid and like where I stand with it and why I feel like maybe it's just... This is content that was never really designed for me as a person that's not raiding now. It's for raiders. And I'm at a point where I feel like if I'm not raiding, I just don't have a lot to do. But I don't want to raid. Do not want to do this. I'd rather not. I want to do chill things. Okay. But we'll see where they go with it in the future. Because overall, I've heard good and bad. I wish Chaotic was more like an adventure, not just one boss. That was my initial reaction. And what I had originally hoped and been excited for when I first heard it announced. I heard Chaotic Alliance raid and it sounded like Storm in the Castle. But it's not. I thought, you know, Alliance raid, but with new difficulty. So Alliance raids you know and love, but harder difficulty. That's kind of what I wanted. But I would like to see that for almost all the content of the game. I want to see, like, chaotic dungeons. Like, every dungeon, scale it up. Let me use my full kit in there. Let me use, like, do the content the game has, but with my full abilities and, like, good rewards and stuff. Scaled to 100. To my current level. That would be good, because the game has a lot of content that's just, I don't see. And I really don't like level syncing. At all. Yeah. The content gap is real. If you aren't raiding, there really isn't much to do. Even if you get into the venue scene. It's hard for me. The venue scene and the role-playing scene, you know, that's stuff I think I would like doing. That might keep me busy. But a lot of it involves using mods. Modding your character. That's kind of a big part of it. I can't do that. As a streamer, I cannot do that at all. I would not do that.